Welcome and good afternoon. This is Commish Orr, and today we're going to give you a little update on my Payoff Pitch project, or Payoff Pitch Season 2 of my Payoff Pitch League, the POPs League as I call it. As a reminder, this league contains, is a 4 American League, 4 National League team league, no interleague play until the World Series. And 3 of the 4 teams in each league are made up of Hall of Famers. The 4th team is made up of great players not in the Hall of Fame. And just competing to see how they do against each other. Payoff Pitch isn't really designed for that, or it isn't supposed to be played that way. But these are the kinds of projects that I enjoy, and therefore that's why I'm doing it this way. Now, if you head over to baseballmaelstrom.com, you can follow the action. In fact, you'll see the latest story, which is either going to be from this project or my Best of the 30s project. You can see past stories or recaps down here, the top being the Payoff Pitch League project that I'm doing, the bottom being the Best of the 30s tournament project that I'm doing. The rest of the stuff on the front page, though, is for the Payoff Pitch League. You see the standings in each league. I'm playing 1/3 of a season, so 54 games. The bottom is the upcoming schedule, the next 4 games in the schedule, and then to the right is the last couple of days of scores. But I want to give you a little bit of a recap on the action so far. As you can see in the American League, Boston Splinters are leading things. They're 6-1. They've won 6 straight games, actually, and the last couple being against the Detroit Rockets. The Detroit Rockets were actually the World Series champs last year. That is the American League team made up of non-Hall of Famers. So just interesting to note there. However, they've lost a couple against Boston here, as Boston's kind of shot into first place. Down in the National League, we have the Chicago Docks, which is the National League team made up of non-Hall of Famers. And they are leading things by a 1-game margin over Houston and LA at 5-2. They just lost their last game, actually, and against LA, and that's dropped them down to 5-2. They were 5-1 coming into this, but still a great start for them. They were in last place in season 1 of this league. So going into some of the stats, we can see, and I already told you about the standings, but let's take a look at batting average, ERA, and offensive and pitching stats and that kind of thing. Boston Splinters leading offensively in the American League with a 303 batting average. Detroit right behind them with a 294. But Boston also has the highest slugging and highest on base of anybody in the league. And we can take a look here and see 13 homers to lead the league. They have the most doubles also with 20. New York with a surprising 7 triples. Way more than anybody else. But Boston also leads in walks. They have the lowest strikeout totals. You can definitely see why they are 6-1, as they're leading in almost all of the offensive categories here. Down on the pitching side, Detroit has a small edge in terms of ERA, with a 4.78 ERA compared to 4.94 for Boston. The league ERA is 5.15, which isn't surprising when you consider batting average is 2.85. On base is 3.48. So there's a lot of offense heaviness in the American League. Down in the National League, we see that Houston is the tops in batting average, a 278 batting average. LA with a dismal 198 team batting average. This is through 7 games. Houston's also leading in on base and slugging as well. Even though LA has more homers than anybody else, the fact that they're only hitting 198 as a team is limiting them in terms of being able to lead in slugging, for example. They're just, they've scored 26 runs, which is kind of middle of the pack, but they've done that with not very good batting average. In terms of pitching, the Chicago Docks leading things at 3.19 ERA, all the way down to the St. Louis Wizards, who were the National League champions last year, but this year have a 4.92 ERA, worst in the National League. So not surprising that they are only 1-6 this year. Now, I did redraft the teams. They were allowed to keep certain players, a core group of players, but then I redrafted. So the teams are made up are pretty different this year than they were last year, other than the non-Hall of Fame teams, of course. Those teams were pretty static because they're the only teams with non-Hall of Famers, and there wasn't really a way to redraft those at all. Let's take a look at the batting leaders. You can see that Ichiro is leading all hitters with 407 average through 7 games. Willie Stargell, though, leading in slugging with a 909 slugging percentage here. Frank Thomas right behind him with a 900 slugging. On base, no surprise here. Ted Williams leading 471 on base percentage. If we go to home runs, we see Frank Thomas leading with 5 homers, with Dick Allen and Reggie Jackson right behind him with 4. Thomas also leading with RBI with 13 RBI. And runs scored with 9, so that's all interesting. Babe Ruth has walked more than anybody with 9 walks. Of course, Ted Williams is right in there too. The difference being that Babe Ruth's batting average is not very good so far, so that's why he's not up here in on base. He's kind of down the list a little bit further than you would expect. Stolen bases are, not a lot of success with stolen bases so far. Again, most of that attributed to the fact that there's a lot of good catchers in the league with good arms, so it's harder to run on them and harder to be successful when you do try to steal. But yeah, that kind of gives you an overview of the offense. Let's take a look at the pitching. So far, Greg Maddux with the best ERA. He is not allowed to run. I think he only has 1 start, though, so that's not too surprising. There are several pitchers with 2 wins, though, the second time through the pitching rotation. Sandy Koufax has a comfortable lead in strikeouts with 20. Several pitchers with 3 saves here. Maddux is, leading in not just ERA, but also opponent's batting average, opponent's slugging, opponents on base. He's only allowed 5 base runners per 9 innings. Again, I think that's in just 1 start, so but just interesting to see. So that's kind of the pitching side of the equation, so that you can kind of see the leaders there too. Once again, just wanted to give you kind of a quick recap of the league, and you can head over to baseballmaelstrom.com. You can find, if you click on one of these, let's look at the Hoots and the Wizards, for example. If you click on one of those, you can get to the box scores and score sheets for each team. If you want to dig a little deeper, you can click on Pop's Season 2 stats if you want to get to the stats. You can click up here to get to the schedule if you want to see that. Here's an example of what you see if you click on one of the games. You can see a box score on the left and the score sheet on the right, so you can kind of follow the action and see what happened in the game. In this particular game, you had Pete Alexander going up against Burley Grimes, and so you can kind of see how that game panned out for everybody. Again, you can get to the old game recaps. I do a little write-up and attach the box score and score sheet so you can see that as well. That's where we will leave things today. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching this. If you have any comments, questions, leave those down in the comments below. And until next time, have a great evening.